Hi, I'm Paul, and in this video I'm going to show you how to replace the motor and the transmission on an EverWood with LiteRise. So let's begin first. I want to remove the headrail end lock here. This part just simply comes right off, and we'll set that aside. And I also have inside here, there is a motor lock and the transmission plate adapter. Both of these have a locking screw, so I want to be sure to loosen those. We'll just give those a few turns to loosen each of those up. And then I want to come underneath the headrail. On the bottom side here is this LiteRise headrail lock, and I want to carefully just pry this loose, just prying underneath that. I want to be careful not to damage any of the slat material. Now, we'll come back up here, and what I want to do is carefully hang on to the D-rod, this shaft right here, and hold on as I begin to slide the motor and transmission out in one piece. And just keep pulling that straight out. So I've removed the motor and the transmission from my EverWood blind. I'm going to go ahead and bring in my new motor and my new transmission. So in preparing to assemble the transmission and motor, I'll need to remove the motor lock, which simply just pops right off from the old motor, and the transmission adapter plate. And if we look here, we can see there's a tab over on the top that I'm just going to pry on that just to release that a little bit. On the bottom side, there's a tab over on the opposite side. So we'll come in there and just carefully pry that. I don't want to pry that too hard and crack those tab overs, but that allows me to release the motor from the transmission. And I'm going to remove the transmission adapter. So I'll start with the adapter plate and simply bring that over the transmission. Then I'm going to bring it to the motor and get those into place. These pins are part of the adapter plate, and it's going to help square up the transmission to the motor. So I'll make sure those pins line up into the area of the motor, and I'm just going to begin to push it together. So now that I have my motor and my transmission fully assembled together, I want to go ahead and pull this motor key here. Now I can bring in the motor lock. So I can just bring this in and make sure that that all seats into place. Now, before I bring these back into the headrail, realize that this needs to be assembled with the blind in the fully lowered position. So what might be the easiest way to do this, and if you have a repair rack to hang the shade from, this might be an easier way too, but I can go ahead and carefully lower the blind. Then I'm going to carefully just gather up the slats. So in doing so, you can see that we've left about 3 wraps of cord here. So now we're ready to bring in our transmission and motor assembly, making sure that it lines up into the headrail. I'm going to bring my motor lock back into place. So as I continue to push this in, I need to then bring this D-rod and engage it into the transmission. And I want to look inside the headrail at that tabbed over area and just turn it a little bit. And I can use some pliers. I'm going to hold that in place and adjust its rotation a little bit so I can then continue to slide the transmission and the motor all the way in. I want to go ahead and flip over the headrail and bring in my LiteRise headrail lock. So we can line that up and go ahead and snap that into place. Then I'll come back to my headrail and I want to lock down these 2 screws here. I don't really need to overly tighten these, just enough to snug them down. I'll go ahead and bring in the headrail end lock, and we can line that in and just slide that right into place. So now we're ready to pull the transmission pins. So let's start with the bottom one first. And I might just come in here with a screwdriver. So we can see that lower transmission pin that I've already pulled down there at the bottom, and we'll get that out later. That's okay right there for now. Now remember, this last transmission pin right here is holding all of the energy of the motor. So prior to pulling that pin out, I'm just going to pry it up here so I can easily retrieve that. I want to, if I'm working on my blind on a work surface, is to bring all the slats together nice and evenly. I'm going to then come into the headrail area here, and I'm going to hold on. I'm going to pinch with my fingers and hold on to that D-rod. This is the rod that is attached to the spools with the take-up cord here. And now we can come in, and I'm going to pull that pin out. I'm going to go ahead and just easily let that go, and we can see that the cord is starting to take up on the motor. So now I'm ready to hang the shade and test the operation. So that's how you replace the motor and the transmission on an EverWood blind with LiteRise.